Hey, this is Carl Gelf with Lie Heavy, formerly of COC. I'm in the Skull, Legions of Doom, Patriarchs of Black. I'm just happy to be here. You got to check out Heavy Galaxy, man. That's where it's at.
Heavy Galaxy Show coming to you guys once again this week with another cool episode. And on today's episode from the mighty Thunder Horse, we got Mr. Stephen Bishop with us today. What's going on, Stephen? How you doing, man? Thanks for coming on.
Doing very well. Thank you guys for having me. I'm a big fan and really looking forward to having this conversation with you guys.
Awesome, man. Yeah, no, appreciate you coming on, man. So yeah, after the fall, man, let's get into it, Stephen, right away here, man. A new record from the mighty Thunder Horse, studio album number 3 for you guys. It's out now on Ripple. And man, I'll tell you, man, what momentum you guys really have going on right now for this band of record. I mean, took the top spot, obviously, the Doom charts last month, man. So congrats to you guys for that, man.
Thank you. So
yeah. So why don't you go ahead and just take us through, I guess, to start us off, Stephen, take us through, I guess, sort of the making of the record. I mean, you guys, of course, now put out your last album about 2 years ago, Chosen One. So pretty quick turnaround for a new album and stuff. So, I mean, were these songs that you guys had kind of written within a vault or something? Is this something you guys just did right after the Chosen One was out? I mean, just take us through, I guess, the recording of the record.
Okay, yeah. After Chosen One, we had a couple of like riffs left over, but I think the only song that we actually had in the vault that carried over to this record was the last song, and that was Requiem. Mm-hmm. But at the time, we had a lot of time on our hands when we wrote Chosen One because, for obvious things going on in the world. Mm-hmm. So we just had a whole lot of material to choose from. And then after we released Chosen One, we did a few select shows. We didn't really hit the road. We didn't really have an opportunity to go tour. So we pretty much just immediately started writing after the fall. And we actually had this record ready last March. But because of the backlog on vinyl and the turnaround, the distribution times, it came out in July of 23, but we turned it in March of 22. So That's how long the gap was for this record to come out.
Oh, damn. Okay. Well, so yeah, you've had it done for a while. So I'm sure you guys already probably got like a whole nother album or something in the bank, I'm sure, at this point too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We're working on technically number 5 right now, because the 4th album we're going to try and release a live album of a bunch of shows that we compiled over the last couple of years.
Oh, hell yeah. Very cool, man. Very cool. Well, yeah. So, I mean, just another onslaught, man, of great Titanic doom metal that you guys served up to everyone. Me and John have chatted about this a little bit before, in that, you guys, when I obviously hear, the foundational sound of Thunder Horse, I mean, obviously, I think not much of an argument there that it's got a foundation of doom metal, but it's not, you guys are not just another doom metal band at all, especially on this record. I mean, musically, you guys definitely, I feel, stretched your wings a bit on this one. I mean, just take the title track, for example. In the middle of that song, we hear that really cool Pink Floyd Run Like Hell type of influence guitar part. Obviously, you got the really cool acoustic, sort of, to me, it sounds like a little bit of like that Jar of Flies, Alan Chains type of thing with the other side. And, of course, you guys get really up-tempo and a little more old-school metal with Monolith, which that's my favorite track on the record, man. I love that song. So, I mean, as a band, how do you guys really incorporate now all these elements into that foundational sound you have? I mean, was your intention, especially on this record, was it to really try some new ideas and concepts, to experiment a bit, or is this just something you guys just get in there, someone maybe has a part, wants to try it, and then you kind of do it? Let's just go ahead and explain that to us, I guess.
Yeah, we're all all of us are a little bit older guys, you know what I mean? So we grew up with like a huge variety of music, you know, ranging from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s on, you know, and,
Mhm.
you know, music has always been a real big part of all of our lives. So we do have a wide variety of influences. And, you know, just because we're called a doom band, you know, I think that's because the umbrella for that genre is so big that
Mm.
out of convenience, people just kind of put a lot of different stuff in that bucket, you know? It's like
Mm.
you know, I've said it in with other people. It's like doom isn't just Candlemass and My Dying Bride anymore. You know, it's
Yeah.
everything. You hear all these like, you know, like heavy blues. You hear psychedelic, you know, prog rock. All kinds of stuff gets whipped in there. And because of our diverse musical backgrounds and our diverse variety of our influences, it all just kind of comes together. We're not really trying to write any specific style. We're just trying to put out something that kind of feels good and sounds good to us. And you know, our days of trying to write the 3 minute and 30 second, you know, hook and hit are far behind us now. You know, we're not trying to do that shit anymore. So we're just putting out songs that kind of feel good and feel right.
You know, geez, Bishop, we've known each other for a good little bit here.
Yeah.
When do we meet? Psycho Vegas, maybe?
Psycho Vegas, I think it was 2018, maybe 19, somewhere. I remember it was at Hard Rock, that for sure.
Yeah, it was like in the pool even or something random.
Yeah.
Wild stuff. And yeah, it's been fascinating to watch the journey of Thunder Horse, you know, from gosh, when you sent me the first CD a long time ago, to what is now. Certainly, I think you got your own sound. I don't mind giving bands genre labels, but I like to use an S with that because I don't think there's one label fits all for a lot of bands. I see you guys as a heavy rock band, and that's a big umbrella. But you certainly lyrically a little bit, you know, doomish, we'll say. So am I guessing, Bishop, you're the guy that comes up with this uplifting lyrical lyrics, or you know, do others add in along the way, or talk to us a bit about that aspect of songwriting?
No, I'm the primary lyricist for the band. Every once in a while, Todd, the lead guitar player, will contribute some ideas. I think Monolith was actually his idea to call the song. It was just kind of a vision he had for it. But I wrote the lyrics around that title. And, you know, I guess my positive message, my uplifting voice that I have is, you know, I try to write lyrics that are interesting and fun. And sometimes I tell a story. You know, I get accused. Sometimes they're campy. Sometimes they're juvenile. You know, they rhyme too much and shit like that. But I'm trying to write. You know, I'm getting older, man. I'm trying to write shit that I can remember. You know, I'm not trying to write the Iliad over here. I'm trying to write stuff that I can hang on to as well. But I enjoy telling stories. I try to make them all kind of relate in one way or another back to me or stuff I'm interested in. It just keeps it interesting for me, and it also helps, you know, drill it into my head a little bit more. If I can relate to it, I can remember it. You know, it's so but I love writing. You know, I always have. I've always been the vocalist in every band I've done since I was 16. So I never have a loss of words, I guess.
And certainly an apocalyptic tinge at times. Now, you're just speaking of vocals, and one thing I heard recently someone say or mention, and I'm like, wow, that is kind of right. You sound at times like Richard Patrick from Filter, which I'm a massive Filter fan. So after I heard that, I was like, I'm listening to it a different way, and sometimes it's interesting. Were you ever a Filter fan?
Yeah, I was. You know, all through high school and like into the 2000s, all the way through the 90s, I was a Rivet head. You know, I was totally into, you know, I was the guy wearing, you know, 242 and It's Red shirts to school. You know, I was going to see all the shows. I was really heavily influenced by a band called the Evil Mothers. They were on Invisible Records, and they were from San Antonio, Texas. Well, when they came out, they kind of brought that whole scene to San Antonio where I was going to school. And I got immersed in that scene. So, you know, I started seeing bands like, Filter, Nine Inch Nails, Manson, Ministry, Nitz Rev, Die Wars. I saw all these bands coming through playing club shows.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of my life, and while other kids were listening to, like radio pop in the 90s or whatever, I was like going to hardcore and industrial shows, hanging out with people that were twice my fucking age, you know what I mean? And listening to music, that was way out of my normal, like it's stuff you're just not going to hear on the radio. But back then we actually went and sought out music to listen to. We didn't just take what, whatever popular station at the time was spitting out. We were heavy into college radio. We were going to record stores and digging through the stacks and looking for this stuff that had the craziest fucking, graphics, and hearing whatever the vendor at the time was putting on the turntable behind the counter. That's how I bought a lot of my stuff. It's like, oh shit, who's this? It's like, oh, that's the new Pigface, or oh wow, that's a band called Cop Shoot Cop. You got to check them out. Just really getting turned on to good music that wasn't the norm, and so all that stuff really had a big influence on me.
Yeah, Filter was unbelievable. For me, the first 3 albums are just really good shit. I know people seem to transfix on the 2 songs, I would say, but they're greatly mistaken if they don't go and actually listen to those first 3 albums. I mean, wow.
I think the first time I saw them was Filter and Prick at a place called the Showcase in San Antonio.
Prick. I remember Prick. It
was a pretty good tour.
Wow.
I saw Filter one year at House of Blues in Orlando, back when I lived there, and it was this unbelievable show. Like, the energy and the tightness of the set, and it was just like, and so it was like a year and a half later, they're coming back to Orlando and they're playing the Hard Rock that time. And my 2 buddies that didn't go the first time got to go this one. And God dang it, if Richard Patrick got so fucked up that he passed out on stage at the very end. Wow. There were still a few songs to go. Yeah, and he went into rehab the next day.
Oh, wow. I was
and the band Earshot opened up for him on that tour. Earshot had just started getting big. And what's funny is I know Will Martin from Earshot, and probably the first time I ever met him to actually talk and, get to know him and all that, I brought that up, and he's like, oh God, that night. I mean, it's just like literally 2 or 3 of the guys, there were 3 guys in the band circled around him, and I saw one of them even kind of kick him a little bit. He was laying up going, oh no.
I've had some shows like that back in the old days too. That's why I play guitar. I play guitar just so it keeps me away from the bar as much, now.
probably
you're
smart. Yeah.
you said you're from San Antonio originally?
Yeah.
Is that where you're born and raised?
I'm not from there, but I lived there like all the influential years of my life. I moved to San Antonio in 8th grade and stayed there all the way through high school. Then I went off to the Navy for a while and then came back to San Antonio. And then I didn't move out of San Antonio until about 12 years ago, where I came down to the Gulf Coast. Just
Nice.
kind of ran my course, and like I did everything I needed to do there, and probably left town at a good time for me.
Yeah. What you mentioned earlier some of the bands, but what would you say would be probably your favorite one or two bands for your senior year of high school?
Oh, senior year of high school, hands down, it was Jane's Addiction, number one. And number two, I was honestly probably like a local hardcore band called Fearless Iranians from Hell. They were like, that was like my two favorite bands of all time back then. And it was just it was a great time to be alive. I graduated in 91 and music was good. And then right after I left high school, boom, Nirvana comes out. Remember I was at my first semester of college, Nirvana came out. And shortly after that, I was like, college isn't for me. And that's when I ran off and joined the Navy to kind of get my shit together. Because it was one of those times where I was like, it was an interesting time for music. We were still getting really good organic stuff back then.
Yeah,
I really like the 90s stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit older than you, just a few years. So the 90s for me was the last great generation where rock and roll was given the opportunity to grow.
It was the last great change, that's for sure. It was the last time that the industry kind of turned on its head, for rock and roll, and all through the 90s and all the way up through the mid 2000s, you had like the big radio rock push where you had like the Earshots and the Filters and Union Undergrounds and bands like that. They were big, and it was good, well produced music.
Yeah.
But then when it just stopped all of a sudden, like music just became inorganic and became very digital, very programmed, very produced.
Exactly.
So you had to go underground. You had to go digging for the guys like the Melvins and Caius, and you had to go digging for that stuff because it wasn't out there for the norm,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, just speaking of San Antonio, since we're talking about that, I mean, anyone who's been to San Antonio knows what a metal town that is, a rock and metal town it is. I remember when I visited music, I mean, just metal clubs, metal bars. I mean, just a couple of bars there were just like dudes that opened a bar. They had like posters on the wall, just like you do it, in your man cave or something. It was just a great town there's a band I remember from the 70s, Legs Diamond. They're huge down there, right?
Huge.
Yeah, huge. Yeah. And most people don't even know who they are, but you go down there, they're freaking huge. And I remember even when I had my label in the mid 2000s, it was Publicists, and just they would send me all this stuff coming out of San Antonio. I was just surprised why there really wasn't more bands getting out there. And I've talked to some people from there, and some of it obviously has to do with location. I know it's not really the easiest location to tour outside of Texas because it's far. Everything's pretty far from it.
Man, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, but I would also have to think that a lot of that, it just has to do with just the blue collar nature of the city, and I guess it's a big military town. Would you agree to that? Why do you think it's such a huge, rock and metal city, San Antonio?
Well, it's Austin's redheaded stepchild, right? It's just like, right down the road from Austin. Austin had all the accolades, all the big superstars were coming out of there. And San Antonio was everybody that, like you said, was just fucking real. They were just like dudes that had jobs, guys that, were working in music stores trying to make ends meet. And San Antonio is off the beaten path. Even the old days in my old band, when we got signed, we had to go to LA to do it. They weren't coming to see us, we had to go out there. So it's just one of those things where, but we did have a couple of like success stories come out of San Antonio. Like I mentioned earlier, that band Union Underground. Got to be really big, they a couple of huge hits on the radio, well produced, Ross Robinson type stuff, just recorded by like some of the greatest guys. And then and that band Evil Mothers I talked about, they were like an independent band, but they were on Invisible Records. And then my old band was on Cleopatra Records and another label called MAA out of New York. And it was there were a few little sprinkles of us that kind of made it out. but then but you really had to go away to make it out of San Antonio. But I
Yeah.
will tell you this, it was truly, I've toured all over the world and I've toured all over the country for sure. And San Antonio has one of the best scenes. You know, it was dubbed the heavy metal capital of the world for
Yeah, that's right.
couple of decades. You
Yep.
know, it was the first town that like broke Judas Priest. It was the
Judas
first
Priest.
town that broke like, you know, like all those bands. You know, the Iron Maiden was like, it was one of the first spots that broke Maiden, you know, because we had a DJ that believed in taking chances. He was like the Wolfman Jack of heavy metal, you know, he was Godfather, Joe Anthony. Rest in peace, he's passed away. But yeah, you know, it was okay to go to clubs and see Metallica and, you know, bands like that. It just happened in clubs in that city, you know, Pantera playing like a beer joint, you know, basically.
Nice.
It was just a great, everybody wanted to play San Antonio.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, and you mentioned, like you said, your old band. Let's talk about your old band, PITBULL Daycare. Obviously, you guys were a big fixture in the industrial metal scene back in the 90s and early 2000s. I mean, so, and you also just brought up another thing here, MIA Records, a label you were on. Now, we had on Craig Riggs from Sasquatch and Kind some you know, about a month or so ago, and his band Roadshow, obviously from back in the day, was also on MIA. I remember I asked him about that because I remember that label there was so many good bands on that label.
Yeah.
And then I remember, you know, and I was a lot of these bands I followed and liked, and one day I remember going, and then they were just done overnight. The label just folded, and I was telling Craig that, you know, I was actually supposed to interview the guy who ran MIA. He was a friend of a friend, and we were going to do a podcast with him and talk about that. Mm-hmm. And the guy bailed out about a half hour before we were going to do it. Just completely bailed out. Oh, shit. Obviously, yeah. And so it just, to me, it just was so peculiar, very peculiar, and I would guess sort of shady situation, like Riggs was saying. He thinks it's just the guy just did it as a tax write-off because it's really screwed over a ton of bands and people who work there and everything. Yeah. I mean, from your experience, man, what was that? What could you tell us about that whole situation that happened with PITBULL Daycare? Because you guys, you know, same thing.
Yeah, the guy that had the money for the label was an oil guy, right? He had he was like an older fellow that just had a shitload of money, and then there was another gentleman that was kind of like managing the label. He was kind of procuring stuff. But then when the office left Houston and moved to New York, they kind of phased out that guy for whatever reason. They brought in some other dudes that went on to like work for Century Media and a couple of other labels. And but when they moved the office to New York is when they got bands like Soilwork and Candiria and, you know, and Atomic Bitch Wax. Like that's when they really picked up all those bands. Okay. It started off as just kind of a small mom and pop in Houston with like us and like one or two other bands. But then once it got to New York, I think they had a high overhead. They were like in a really like kind of a posh part of town. They had a big, you know, a big office. Right. And it was, you know, it was a weird time for music. Digital was breaking out, you know, so like tangible items like CDs and vinyl were going away. And everybody was like, you know, file sharing, and that killed a lot of labels. Like the labels that were barely hanging on, file sharing like wiped them out, man. It was that was a nail in the coffin for those guys. Yeah. And they didn't, I don't think they had a strong enough roster because we bailed out, went to Cleopatra for good, for better, for worse. And I think a lot of the other bands kind of took off. I think Candiria went to another label. Soilwork definitely did. You know, Atomic Bitch Wax. They didn't really do a whole lot of that. It took them a long time to follow up that first record. So, but I mean, I think that's a pretty strong roster if you think about it. And it's diverse too. You have like new metal, kind of industrial metal. You got, I mean, like East Coast fucking karate chopping hardcore stuff, and then you have like a full on like stoner rock band. You know, it was a very strange lineup.
It was. There was some good bands, but you're right. It was very diverse. But so the interesting now with PITBULL Daycare, you know, I mean, you just, you know, we're mentioning, I mean, alluding to the fact that you guys had a good run. Like you said, after that, you were on Cleopatra. You guys, obviously, there was that one song you guys had that was on the Saw soundtrack, I believe, too, right? For the movie?
A song called Feel So Dead. It was on the Saw soundtrack.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, how did now the band make, you know, well, not really the band, obviously, then after you know, I mean, you guys probably, disbanded around mid-2000s or so is when that kind of ended, right? And then, obviously, you know, Thunder Horse splits later, but it wasn't just you, obviously, your guitarist, too, was in it as well, right? TC, he was also
Yeah.
and Pitbull Daycare as well. So what now just now you obviously, a little older and stuff too, but now with the sound obviously you have now is nothing like Pitbull Daycare at all. Was this sort of like, I mean, I guess a natural sort of transition of a sound for you guys going from that to do like sort of that, semi doomy, sound? I mean, what gave you guys the sound that you have now with Thunder Horse?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I started playing guitar. I never played guitar in Pitbull. I was just a vocalist, right? I was like the crazy guy up front. And Todd was a fantastic guitar player, but yeah, we disbanded. I think we did our last tour in 2006 with Ministry and Revco. We officially disbanded like a year and a half later, 07, 08, sometime in there. Mm-hmm. And then I split. I left San Antonio and bailed out. And then of all things, I went to Psycho Las Vegas and, just on a whim, and was so inspired and so kind of like blown away by all the music that once I got back home and I was working offshore at the time, I just started kind of writing music again. And I was never a guitar player. So for me, I grew up listening to Sabbath and Kiss and stuff like that. So I started just kind of writing the riffs that felt good to me and that I could technically just physically play, because I'm not a great guitar player. But for me to do like slower, kind of like more creepy stuff, I did a lot of that in Pitbull as far as programming goes. And like, like doing all the pads and the strings and everything. I did a lot of the programming. So I've always been able to hear the music and understand it. Played trumpet my whole life, so I have a musical background. I understand music, and it was just kind of what came out. But even with the industrial stuff we did, whether it was fast or slow or in between, it was always inspired by bands like Black Sabbath and Kiss and Iron Maiden and Judas Priest. Like all that music it all has the same foundation and the same core, right? Mm-hmm. It's like when you hear Ministry or one of Al's offshoot bands doing Supernaut, wasn't by accident. They were inspired by that. You know what I mean? That was something that they were into. So it Black Sabbath are and everybody, I'm sure everybody agree, or most people agree, that they're like the godfathers of this genre of music, because it is so they really have the hook and they capture you, and I love listening to it. So at my leisure time, I was listening to Paranoid all the time, every day. You know what I mean? Because I enjoyed the album. So it was just natural for me to write stuff similar to that,
Most influential band ever created would be Black Sabbath. If you look at the family tree and everything that's below, it's all things that are heavy. I mean,
they touch everything.
People can say Beatles and stuff, but to me, Beatles were just a great pop band that showed that you could, have put together unbelievably good songs and have different people singing them and everything else and talent. But Sabbath created something, like evolved it. It's just pretty amazing.
Yeah, the Beatles were the minor transition though, like from major to minor transitions. They were the godfathers of it. Like they truly are.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And I don't care who you are. You pick up a guitar now and try to play Beatles songs, they're tough. I don't care how good of a guitar player you are. They're difficult songs to learn. And when you listen to them, they don't sound that way.
Right.
There's weird chords, there's weird transitions. It's hard shit to play, man.
And not just guitar, bass too. Paul McCartney is an amazing freaking bassist, but yeah.
Now, I remember the first time I saw you was at the first Ripple Fest, where I saw you play live, and that is a memorable set, to say the least, as that was the original spot, where New Braunfels or whatever, middle of fucking nowhere, and and it was 2 stages inside.
Yeah,
and I remember the lights all around you, all around that crazy maniacal thing that they did. And speaking of maniacal, there was you. It just the light blaring down on you as you sit there with no shirt on, sweating profusely.
Oh, it was hot. Yeah, it was hot.
And they did a great job in producing that set as well. And you guys really blew away a lot of people. Me and my buddies, we were fucking stoned off our minds. And so it was just awesome. And so here we are. You played last year too. Another great set. You played in the middle of the day on the smaller stage. But you're coming for round 3. Ripple Fest 3 coming up here. Gosh, just about a month away.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Yeah, I'm real excited. I kind of bribed my way into those. I tell Ryan, High Desert Queen Ryan, hello. I bribe him. I say, look, I'll bring out all the orange gear for the side stage, but you got to let us play, and you got to give me a good time slot. So I kind of force him into a fucking corner to let us.
He says you guys are, old school mates, and he sang your praises when he was on the show, and certainly. And do you know what stage you're playing on, or what day yet?
I know the day. He's not disclosing a lot of information yet, but I'm assuming it's probably going to be, I think this time it's going to be the larger stage, and somewhere in the mid-afternoon, early evening is what I'm thinking, but on a Friday. I just don't know the exact time yet. He's keeping it tight-lipped right now.
Yeah, I know. Hopefully it is, as the sun is down. I think you're a band that needs to be heard in darkness.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a big believer visual and sound put together. There's a production element to things. And when I just think you're a dark toned band to begin with. And so I just really thought it was a great set. Both of them have been really good. Let's go back in time. You did a cover song once.
Yep. Yeah.
Dear Mr. Fantasy.
Yeah.
By Traffic. So how does that happen? And talk to us a little bit about it.
Purely accident. I just happened to be driving home one day, and I heard it was actually Stephen Still's version of Dear Mr. Fantasy that I heard. And I was like, oh man, that's a great, and I like Steve Winwood. I'm a big fan, he's a great vocalist and a great songwriter.
Totally.
And I was like, oh man, I haven't heard that in a long time. So I came in, pulled up on Spotify, listened to the Traffic version, listened to the Stephen Stills version. I was like, oh, those are interesting changes. Cut a demo in the house and sent it to the guys in the band. They're like, oh yeah, that's great, man. We'll do that one. Well, the demo vocals that I did were the keepers on the album. I never even recut the vocals. We just took them and put them on the track after we laid it down, and that's what made the record. It was just it was a song it felt good. It was easy to sing. It's really one of the creepiest damn songs you could ever hear in your life. I mean, it's a very kind of like dark song if you read the lyrics, and you know, it seemed fitting for Thunder Horse at the time, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a great version. And you seem to slip it in the sets sometimes, right?
We've done it a couple times, yeah. Todd has to bring out the old the talk box thing. That's kind of a pain in the butt sometimes. So it's usually we'll only do that song if we're doing a kind of a larger headlining set where we can like really kind of bring out the gear and do like the show, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of, you know, on these festivals and opening slots, it's a throw and go situation. We don't have time to like really like do what we do. Because when like you mentioned, we are kind of a nighttime band. When we headline, we can do like, you know, we do like these 3-dimensional projections. We'll bring out an extra PA in the back of the club and do quadraphonic sound with like samples and painting all over. It's a real head fucking trip, man. You know,
that's what I
people get off to it because they're like nobody does that stuff anymore. So we kind of take that old school industrial, you know, butthole surfer vibe, throw a little Pink Floyd, the Who quadraphonic sound in there, and do like our like heavy metal set with it. It's so it really kind of is an immersive experience when we do a headlining show.
What bands are you looking most forward to seeing at Ripple Fest this year?
Shit, all of them, really. You know, like every year, there's never a band that disappoints. It's he always has such a great, you know, the weird. I don't know if you really read between the lines on that poster though, but if you look, I think like 95% of Caius is going to be playing that show at one time or another that weekend. I was like,
not 95%, but I think he's got it's like 80 or 75%. I mean, he's still missing Reader and Josh.
Yeah, yes, I was like, wouldn't it be kind of cool if that was like a pop-up surprise for everybody?
Oh, you know that's what he wants, for God's sake. I've talked to him about it before, and I go, dude, I've had the same dream. I've done a show already years ago with all four of those guys that are playing with him.
Right.
And I've met Reader once.
Yeah.
That's it. Josh is an elusive one so far, but I have faith that one day I'll meet him and Mr. Grohl.
Yeah.
When the time is right, I'll say. But come on, give me a couple bands, dude.
Gee whiz.
King Buffalo?
Yeah, absolutely. King Buffalo. You know, and I want to thank King Buffalo for not putting out an album in July of 2023. I would like to thank King Buffalo and Green Lung for not putting anything out in 2023. You know, that really,
or Graveyard
really made my month. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'd say, you know, The Well, I love seeing The Well. I think they're always like a fun band to see, and like I really, really dig them. I love the Telekinetic Yeti guys. I'm excited to see them. They haven't been in Texas in a long time. It's weird. It's different. It's not just the same old stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And there's just a million other bands on the bill. I'm going to be there all 4 days, and there's a couple of surprises that I think that you would dig. There's a band called The Heroin out of San Antonio.
Yeah.
Our drummers
heard about them.
They're hard rock band. They're really good, and I think they're closing the pre-party show, so they're going to be one to stick around late.
Yeah,
Linwood.
I've actually never heard them before. Maybe I don't remember.
They played out here
sampling something, but I've heard of them. So yeah. I remember even the boys from Void Vader. I think it was Eric brought them up one time after playing the show with them, and it was like, whoa, these guys are good. I'm like, it's just such a weird name.
They really are very good. But, like they're a good rocking band, and Linwood, like you mentioned, is just like an animal alive. This guy, he is on like 111 all the time. You know, this guy is just a beast as a front man, and it kind of makes me jealous. It's like I said, I put a guitar on now. I can just stand there with an old lead foot and pretend like I'm being cool. This guy is a monster with a microphone, you know.
Yeah, it's gonna be a hell of a 4 days. I remember last year when I walked in, I saw Ryan, and I think I saw you, and but then all at once everything stopped, and my brain was like, "What the fuck?" And it was like hip hop playing, and I'm like, "Oh no, someone." Okay, Ryan, hey. I made a playlist for the festival. And I went through, I had to talk to 3 different people before I finally got the decision maker, who was very happy that I did that. He's like, good. I didn't want to have to sit there and try to think of things and all that. I'm like,
Yeah.
If you're ever putting that behind again, just remember to play rock and roll at a rock and roll festival.
I took a picture of you. Actually, I tagged you in Vegas Rock Revolution. I tagged you both. I was like, "Oh," I said, "Thank God, Gist has the helm." And you're looking at the
I know. You were right next to me. I turned around and you were like right next to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, here I got 2 playlists. Yeah, I'll do the same this year for them if they want. Because I just, again, production. I just think, serve, respect the crowd, respect the nature.
Yeah, that club, they really have like pretty good PAs. The small stage, you don't need a whole lot over there, and the big stage, it sounds great. It's I really love that venue. We hardly ever play north of the river in Austin. Like, I'm perfectly happy playing Far Out Lounge in South Austin. I think it's a fantastic place. The people are great. And I'm just real excited. That's one of the things I love about Ripple Fest. I just love going to that venue. So it really, it kind of like rounds it out for me. Yeah.
It is. It's for me, it's easy to maneuver around, and you got different settings, and then the whole thing just changes at night. And so, people bitch and moan about the weather and all that, but I just didn't care. Honestly, I was just happy to be there. I drank water. I didn't overdo it, drinking booze, drinking beer during the day, and just, I went inside when I went inside sometimes, and hung out with you guys.
Boy, I did. And I pounded down for 4 days. I was just a wreck on the 4th day. It was brutal. I felt pretty good. But then, a few days later, when all the alcohol's left your body and you're home laying in bed, you're like, oh, wow, my legs are tired and all this other stuff, But that's getting old, got to get in game day shape. It's only a month away, man. And I can't wait to see King Buffalo. It's been a little while. They don't stop in Vegas anymore for tours. They did a tour here once, and they were playing a venue called Beauty Bar, which is now defunct. And literally Beauty Bar closed just a few days after the show. And so it was just such a bad showing that I think that's left a bad taste in their mouth. I'm like, guys, sometime let's try this again, and I'll get something really good set up. Yeah. But I love those guys. It's unique. It's part of what I call the new wave of heavy psych, really leading the way on that. And of course, Acid King coming in, Doom Legend, legends there. And then of course, and then all the stoner rock legends, so many, obviously you mentioned earlier Caius members. And of course you throw in the Tommy Bitchwats and Sasquatch and Wolfat. Yep. Those are, so it's going to be a fucking good time. Ryan will accept checks in the mail for promotions for that. What is your favorite bands nowadays? Some favorite new bands. Right now I'm like on it's kind of weird. Like I put on I have iTunes, right? That's like my preferred playlist that I listen to. So I put it on Thunder Horse Radio on iTunes, and I just hit play and let it run, right? And then I always hear just really great stuff. And I get excited because I'm like, ooh, shit, maybe they're playing me on their station too, because I'm hearing them on my station. Right. So I get real excited. But right now, I'm not going to lie. My 2 favorite bands this week as of right now are probably Spelljammer and Kal-El. I'm just in love with those 2 bands right now. And every time it comes on, I'm fucking cranking the shit out of it. And I'm like, oh, this is so heavy. And then right after that will be something else like Suncrow, somebody else that I'm, just absolutely love. But I got turned on to 2 bands last week. Yeah. I got turned on to 2 new bands last weekend at the Berkey City Rock Festival up in Albuquerque that Roman put on.
Yep.
I got turned on to Early Moods. I had never heard them until.
Great band.
Yeah. Holy shit, man. Those guys melted my face. And another band called Champions, and then Sorcia from Seattle. I thought they were just unbelievably badass too. And then you have your regulars. You had the Weed Eater and Pike and Versi Automation, like all the big guys. But some of the earlier kind of 7, 8 o'clock bands, I think really, really kind of took the show that night. There were some great bands that I wasn't familiar with.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, Early Moods is a big one. They check a lot of the things right now that's going on. I've been watching for a number of years, and they're young too.
Yeah,
they're very young.
Very young.
Yeah,
That's what
but-
makes me sick. I was like, well, fuck these guys. They're all young. I was like, it really kind of bummed me out.
yeah,
They were so
They've,
good, man. They were just so good, you know, and they
yeah,
were
they
fun to
definitely-
watch. They're real high energy.
Nice, man. Well, how was how was that festival, man? Talk to us a little bit about that, the Berkey.
Oh, it was killer. Like, you know, Albuquerque's like a little gym of the Southwest, right? It's like a cool scene. It's real laid back, real chill. It reminds me a lot of San Antonio, honestly. It's just San Antonio, I think, is a little bit more hectic than Albuquerque.
They're both kind of old fashioned cities. They still got a lot of old buildings, and yeah.
But you know, Roman Barham is just like one of the like scene's like classiest guys, right? He's he's a good dude. And he put this festival on. You know, he comes from Monolith on the Mesa, and he put this together, kind of bringing like scaling it back, but still wanting to keep a festival going, and just brought in a really great lineup of bands. You know, bands I hadn't heard, bands I have heard. It was only 2 nights, so you're not just completely beat up from 4 or 5 days of music like a Psycho would be, or or a Ripple Fest even.
Yep.
It gave you time to kind of just come out and breathe and see music, and the venues there. Whether it's the Launch Pad, the In Between Bar, or the El Rey Theater, all right there in a row, you could literally just walk door to door to door, and
Nice.
all the venues sound good and look good. So it was fantastic, man. I really enjoyed it, and I hope Roman invites us back next year, because I would definitely I'd go just on a one-off, no problem.
And
Nice.
speaking of Roman, he's in the band Red Mesa, which will also be playing at Ripple Fest, Texas. And I've known those guys for quite a while. Roman, Red Mesa even played one of my shows years ago at the aforementioned Beauty Bar, ironically enough. And you mentioned earlier Kal-El. They just released a new single,
Yes,
by the way. So I dig those Norwegians for sure. They got the space element in there. Cool vocal production where it's obvious it's not is a natural, but it just is part of their branding. And so I dig those cats.
Yeah, I think they're just outside enough where it's interesting to me. You know what I mean? It's not just the same old stuff over and over. Like, they're really doing something I think that is sonically interesting and pleasing to me. Same thing with Spelljammer. Spelljammer is just heavy, right? But then you listen to them, you're like, wow, it's really interesting what they're doing. That's why I enjoy listening to them.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's get back to talking some Thunder Horse here. One of the things, Steven, I got to say about, just in general, the band, and I think that's one thing that really you guys do better than anyone that has that, that, if we want to, we were talking before a little bit, that doom metal sort of foundation is the lead guitars with Todd. I mean, unbelievable. I'm listening to this, after the record, and it's just song after song. The leads are just top notch, and I really think that's really what makes you guys stand out. Like I said, any band that has that doomy foundation, just between your vocals, between the sampling and programming you guys do. Obviously, you've had a lot of experience doing that over years, but the lead guitar is what really just, I think, are just phenomenal with in the band, and it's something I'm hoping that people are going to start giving him more attention for, just the band in general attention for, is, you said, is all the extra things that you guys have, because I'm not bagging on doom metal or any bands, but let's be honest, there's some bands that, you listen to them, they're doing me okay, but it's really mundane, and it can be a little dull and boring, and that's the one thing about Thunder Horse that you guys are not at all. There's always something that's coming, and that kind of, takes you by surprise, or, it's a little something you're not expecting, you keeps you on your toes. And is that something that you guys, purposely sort of try to do with the sound? Is that, is to put those surprises in there, or little things that you're not really anticipating coming?
Yeah. In my opinion, Todd should be on the cover of Guitar Player magazine. Like, I think he just has more soul in his hands than a lot of guitar players do. Yeah. He truly is an underrated and underappreciated guitar player. And I'm very fortunate to have him in the band, because I suck. So he makes me look really, really good. You know what I mean? So I love playing with this guy. But as far as like us having like the weird twists and turns, it's like, hey man, I love playing low Z, one note, stoner doom drone stuff just as much as the next guy. But just like you, I get bored with it too. I'm kind of ADHD, and my mind's all over the fucking place a lot of times. I need something to kind of like, I need to go this direction now. I need to go here now. You know, so that I think that my my psychological issues are a big factor in how the music is written, because it will be like, okay, that's cool, but now let's do this. Okay, let's try this here, you know. And Todd's a real big thing too, because Todd is a very good guitar player. So he gets bored doing, you know, he doesn't want to just do the same riff over and over and over again. He wants to kind of go off in the left field. And I think that's what keeps it interesting, because we do not want to just like be like background music. We want to take you on a journey from this first song to the last song and have you kind of like, and maybe you don't like every song, but we want you to know that it is a trip from the beginning to the end, and it was done on purpose.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, and you know, and the one thing too about the record that I'm just seeing, you know, from fans in general, like I'm seeing this being really well received by fans that aren't usually, like guys I know that aren't usually listening to the slower type of, you know, slower tempo type of metal. I mean, people like guys I know that are really into like old classic metal and even some power, you know, power metal, and even some like symphonic metal and stuff are like putting this up on their social media page and being like, oh, you got to check this record out. Yeah. I mean, have you guys noticed that too? That's really crossing over a lot of different genres in metal and heavy rock. It really is.
It was very surprising to us how well received the album's been. And, you know, it was like, I love the record. I'm very excited about it. But like you said, to hear like some of these more traditional metal, you know, like the power metal guys, so they're getting off to it. And I think it is because it's just it's interesting. You know, usually when people go, oh yeah, this doom metal band, they're like, oh, okay, they're like, it's going to be this shit again. Right. When they put it on, they're like, oh, that's different. Oh, that's weird. It goes here. It's like, oh, that's and then wait a minute. Why does this next song sound like Judas Priest? You know, it's like it gets kind of wacky for them. And I think because it keeps them entertained and keeps them off guard, that it makes it interesting for people. And that's a very flattering thing for them to do. You know, we never write me, like I told you earlier, we don't write music to try to like, you know, have a hit. We just write music that feels good. And for people to like what we're doing, and from a variety of backgrounds, a variety of genres that like what we're doing, is a huge compliment. We can't thank them enough. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he kicks ass live for sure. Yeah. I remember really him sticking out to me last year when I saw him. I was like, whoa, just really shredding it, man, killing it.
Good guitar player, man.
One thing you've had very consistent about your albums is artwork. Mm-hmm. Talk to us a little bit about the theming of the artwork. Who does it? I think it's beautiful and really cool. So talk to us a little bit about that.
For 3 albums in a row, we've had a gentleman named, he goes by Pig Hands. His name's Antonio, but Pig Hands has been our artist since the first album. And I stumbled on him looking at a website or a Facebook group called Heavy Metal Masterpieces. And he was like, had some work up there. And I was like, wow, this guy's stuff is just beautiful. So I sent him a Facebook Messenger and was like, hey man, I have this band. We have a new record. I got a few songs. Can I send it to you? If you like the music, will you consider doing some artwork for us? And ever since then, like we've been working with them for 3 albums in a row, and we're definitely doing a 4th with them. And then we're talking about maybe revamping, but still keeping him involved with it, just kind of going a different direction in what we're doing. He has a very distinct style. And each album is a story that is kind of progressing to the next album, the 4th album. So that'll be kind of like the 4 Horsemen type deal. Okay. And that's kind of been the ongoing theme. And if you really just kind of put your headphones on and listen to them from very start to very end of 1, 2, and 3, it really kind of makes sense. And then number 4 will be kind of the wrap up of the whole series. So we're excited about that one.
Nice, very cool.
That's wild. If you think about, okay, I'm going to throw a question at you here, Bishop.
All right.
What would be your dream tour for Thunder Horse to be on?
Killing Joke.
Ah, nice.
Without a doubt, because I think Killing Joke appeals to a lot of people. They're probably one of my all-time favorite bands. You know, very influential to me. I think the Jazz and Geordie are just like unbelievable musicians all together. And that would be my dream tour, would be Killing Joke.
Nice.
Reach
Don't
out.
even have to think twice about that one.
Yeah, that was fucking quick. For sure. For sure. You know, speaking of tours, is there anything like that brewing with you guys, or what, you know, where are you at with that kind of stuff?
We're definitely going back to the UK and EU next year. We're already like fielding some invites for some of the festivals over there. We love playing there. It's a totally different vibe, totally different crowd. It's because we take that 2, 3, 4 weeks to go overseas. It's hard to commit those 2, 3, 4 weeks here in the United States. So we try to capitalize more on doing the festivals in the US. I know that next year we're definitely going to try and go back to Berkey. Ripple Fest is always one of our all-time favorites. I've reached out to JB. Hopefully, I think we're going to be able to do Maryland, the MDF next year, which would be a huge event for us. We haven't been to the East Coast yet. So if we do MDF, then we, of course, will do some shows around there because everything's so convenient to Maryland. We can hit a lot of shows. But you know how it is, John. You know, going west is hard, right? Because it's 8 to 12 hours between every show. We're going east.
Well, it's not that bad. But Albuquerque to Phoenix is a bit of a bear. That's the big one. Once you get to Phoenix, it's 5 hours, and you have like literally 4 markets to go to. And same with Vegas. Vegas being one of them. So you kind of got Phoenix, Vegas, San Diego, LA, and even Orange County. And you can count the desert too, but honestly, you're not going to get big crowds there. And they're all like, you know, within hours of each other, you know, 5 hours or less of each other. So but getting out there is the tough part. And you're right. You know, plus you got to go through all kinds of New Mexico and all kinds of other parts of Texas to get to even Albuquerque.
For us is 9-10 hours just getting out of Texas.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a big fucking state. Yeah,
maybe you can get an El Paso show, you know, and that'll help you kind of halfway. It's like, for San Antonio to LA is 24 hours. You know, that's driving straight through. It's a long drive.
Yeah, you said like Houston to El Paso is like you said, like 9 to 10 hours, right? Because you're cutting right through the state. So
Houston to El Paso is 12 hours.
It's 12 hours. Wow, even more. Wow, damn.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long drive for me. So back in the old days, we used to go we'd go San Antonio to LA and kind of tour around that market, like John talked about, and then we'd come back for a couple weeks, and then we'd go San Antonio to Chicago, tour the Midwest market, come back to San Antonio for a few weeks, and then we'd go like San Antonio to Florida, hit the Gulf Coast market, and then we go San Antonio to like Virginia and hit all that market. You know, it was like we called them spider web tours, where we just kind of branched out and did these weird little webs instead of because I physically, because I have a job, and so do all the other guys now. I can't just pick up and take off for 5 or 6 months like I used to. I can't do 200 days a year anymore. We have to be very selective about what we play. Festivals make sense because I'd rather do one show in front of 1,000 people than 10 shows in front of 100 type thing. It's just one of those things where
those are some big numbers you're throwing around there.
Yeah,
it's more like in our world, it seems like it's more like playing in front of hundreds instead of playing in front of tens. At times.
That's why festivals help out, because you get that opportunity where people are very budget conscious nowadays. They'll spend a little extra money to go see a shitload of bands over 3 or 4 days, rather than spending, gee whiz, like say $10, $15 cover, $100 in a bar tab between you and a partner, driving, Ubering, maybe a hotel. That gets very expensive for people. Festival makes it more worthwhile for them. And I love outdoor festivals. I hope they keep going. I know it's hot right now, but shit, it's the summertime. It's hot every year in the summertime. It's just the way it is,
Nothing new there. You were in Europe for how long?
3 weeks.
Nice. First time over there.
All UK, not Europe. We were only in England and Wales.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was crazy. We did a lot of shows in England, like all over, and it was really, really fun. Like we played some weird places, and it was great.
I bet. What would you say is the difference in the crowds versus Americans?
I don't think that they're saturated like we are here. I don't think they get as much traffic as we do in the United States.
Yeah.
So it seems like they're very appreciative and they're very into, like, they're very focused when you're playing. They're not hanging out like talking about what's going on, down the road. They're really intensely watching the set, which I thought was really nice. And another thing that is a big difference between there and here is that whether you're playing the smallest punk rock bar on the circuit in overseas, the PA is still badass. But you come, here in America, sometimes it's like gee whiz, man, you're lucky to get 2 speakers on a stick type thing. It's a challenge here sometimes. So that was really kind of interesting over there, is that even the small venues with a small stage, postage stamp places had a great PA everywhere you went. And that was very nice.
Nice.
That's
cool.
Interesting. Yeah. And they got the hospitality thing and all that too, which
Dude, everybody was
hate
cool.
when I have to break it. I hate it when I have to break it to bands from other countries. I'm like, we're the worst over here. We don't we don't put you up, and we don't have, $50 buyout per person or what. It's crazy.
Well, I think he was alluded to, though. The countries are so small, this country's just so freaking big. You know what I mean? So it's I think you're just going to naturally get, and then just in general, rock just isn't obviously something, especially the young generation, it's not part of the culture like it was when we grew up. I mean, rock was part of our, culture. It's just not anymore. And I think that's,
it's hip hop nation now, no doubt about it. But it's funny though, guys. We were talking before the show. So I've been to 3 shows in a row this weekend. And I skipped the biggest show, and it was 3 massive rock and roll bands. Started off with Rival Sons on Friday night at House of Blues. Amazing show. But only sold like 600 tickets max. They didn't even have upstairs opened. They closed off. And hey, I was literally 5 people from the stage, and that's fucking awesome. You know what I mean? And I did not have to worry. It wasn't all packed and crammed. So Saturday night was Greta Van Fleet. I did not go to that, but Greta Van Fleet playing, I think, God, it might have been even at the arena or something. It's crazy, And they're obviously a big band, not my thing, but a big band. And then last night, put the nail in my coffin, was Clutch.
Yeah.
And, that's like, I was like, wow, someone probably should have marketed all those together somehow or another, because it's like 3 really big, massive rock and roll bands.
One weekend,
and there's not a ton of them left, quite frankly. I mean, Queen Stone Age, no doubt about it. Great new album, in my opinion. But, we need the return of bigger at times. And it's just, unfortunately, and I've talked to people that are in the industry. I've worked a little bit, even briefly, in this part of the industry. Payola is at such a business racket right now.
Yeah.
These guys make a lot of money setting things up. You buy campaigns and stuff. So it's really, we have such a fix in America. And that's another reason why all these styles that fall underneath my side of heavy rock, we'll say, meaning not Octane radio stuff, but our umbrella that go, as heavy psychedelic to fucking stoner to doom to whatever. No one's paying. No one's going to do all that stuff. No one, no labels. No one's going to do that. But when you have management companies and management companies are a humongous part of this. They're handlers for these things, and they help direct where everything's happening. And so it's, I got into the music scene just 6 years or so ago, maybe 7. And I've worked on some different facets of it, just and the education of it and enlightenment. Depressing, quite frankly, at times, but very obvious on why rock and roll is not part of our culture anymore. And you can see it on TV and commercials. It's just, representation is at a minimal at this point in time. And so kids, the new norm to them The new norm to them and those TV commercials and TV shows are a whole lot different than the norm that we were painted a picture of. You know what I mean? I mean,
back in the old days, you know, it was nothing for me to like. I had a manager, I had a booking agent, I had a lawyer, I had everything back in the old days, and we were like a small band. Now, you know, I've had like 3 pretty good records. You know, I'm on a what I consider to be a fantastic label. You know, maybe they're not, you know, Sony, but I mean, fuck, who is anymore?
Yep.
Oh, I love Ripple Music. Todd has been fantastic to us.
God's unbelievable.
And dude, I've sent a million emails out. I've reached out, sent press packages, EPKs, everything. I can't get a fucking return email to say, not even to say fuck off from a manager or a booking agent.
Oh yeah.
Anybody. Like nobody will will touch us. Like I can't get in. Like everything that we do is completely DIY.
Yeah.
You know, like when we went over to UK, thank God for our buddies in Dunes and, you know, Goat Major and, you know, Cyclona. Those guys helped us out book everything. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had anything over there. Ryan Garney, I never would have got Desert Fest if it wasn't for Ryan from High Desert Queen just being nice and giving me a contact information. Like, dude, like I said, I've begged for a manager, can't get one. Thought I had a booking agent, never booked a show for me.
Wow.
Made an announcement that I was on their roster, never once booked a show.
Wow.
You know, and it was like one of those things. It's like, well, shit, you know, like, I would love to have an agent because, man, I fucking hate doing the work.
Yeah, no, it's something that we'll say that recently I had a conversation with a booking agent who's probably going to have to drop half his roster because they're not making enough per show, according to the people he works with. Yeah. And so I've considered it going into this potentially because quite frankly, I need more income myself. There's a big need for it out there because most bands, there's just not enough capital and revenue coming in to have a manager and stuff like that some of the time. And then, you know, these booking agents, they'll be like, no one knows them. That's, you know, what they'll say. So there's no reason they're going to want to pick up someone, you know, and use time. And of course, time is a resource, right? We have a limited amount of it. And so it's so tricky. We need to continue to push and revitalize and get people to listen to more music. I can't say it enough. I know I'm like fucking feel like I'm a preacher on a Sunday right now, preaching to the bishop.
Yeah.
And my buddy here, Matt, but it's just I had a disturbing conversation Saturday night. I say disturbing, it's maybe a little too strong, but you know, with a couple people, and they were like, dude, I mean, you know, what? You were Rival Sons? What are they? Who are they? What are they? I was like, really? Like, no, why would I know them? I'm like, oh shit. I don't know. They opened up for a pretty big band. Black Sabbath. You heard of them? And they're like, yeah, but so what?
You got to think about it though, John. Like back in the day when you and I were kind of like really like heavily like involved coming up, stuff like that. Labels still did ad buys. They did the buy-in. There was a big market push on like college radio. There was a big market push on just trying to get local radio to play your stuff. I don't think that anybody pushes radio or ad buys anymore at all, you know.
Well, I did the research, Bishop. There's 3 labels left. 3. Like Atlantic Records technically is not a label anymore. They're a brand. Yeah. Because they were bought out. So there's only 3 labels left. And as many of us know from history and just from education of living life, when you have the few control the many, narratives change and everything else. And so we're talking 3 labels, man. And so that money that they would put towards those kind of things, when there was more labels, there were labels competing with each other. Because in a free market, the more competition you got, the better things are going to be usually. But when you put it in the control of 3, and then you look at all of them, and most of them are managed under the talent agencies or management companies, very similar. So it's like, it literally, you start doing the family tree, it's like, holy shit. It's the same people doing everything. And of course, the labels are in New York and Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And we know what's going on with Hollywood and with advertising. Look on ads on TV and just watch. And after a while, you're like, this really isn't exactly America. This is kind of weird, you know? And so everything's just gotten strange. It's pretty apparent what's going on with us.
Hence the whole album.
There you go. Nice.
It is. It's an unfortunate thing, but there's opportunity still.
Well, why don't we have a station on Sirius? Like, why doesn't our genre have a station on Sirius?
I'm trying to get connected with Jose to have a talk.
He's played some over the years. I mean, a while ago, but not enough. I mean, a band here or there. No, you're right.
They've created their own brands, Matt.
Well,
I
know.
Created like Octane is now their own heavy rock brand. It's pretty genius. You know, and it's all that really high produced stuff. The Boycos, which live in town, they're producers that do a lot of this stuff. Live here in town. It's like a father son thing.
I mean, the bottom line is there's just no money in music anymore. I mean, it stopped when digital took over. I mean, that's why you have no artist development. I mean, all those labels got rid of all those departments after that. You know, there was no more. I mean, and it's also, we've talked about a lot, John. You know, it's easier to control a single artist, a solo artist, and then you have a band, a rapper, or a hip hop guy. Exactly. So, you know, that's just the way they've gone. And so it's just, it's up to, you know, guys like us, guys like Steven and his bands, just to do our part on and just, you know, do the best we can with it. And that's it. Right. I mean, what else is there to do? You know?
Yeah. It rock and roll, the flame's not going to go out, but, you know, with this generational, we've missed a whole couple generations, like a decade plus, where rock and roll's kind of been on a but it's like almost it's the most pushed down culturally in America ever, and that's our creation. We fucking created rock and roll in America.
It's a wheel. Right now we're at the bottom of the carousel. There's an ebb and a flow to it, and you know it's that weird 10-year cycle that everybody talks about. You know, like it comes and goes every decade. Well, it'll pop up again, but you know, you can see it. You know, 5 or 6 years ago, like doom was the bee's knees, right? Our genre of music, like it was the hottest shit on planet Earth. Right now, it's black metal. If you fucking have corpse paint on and you're playing like 1,000 notes a minute, you're the cool shit at the moment. Well, next week it'll be something different. You know, it's just the way it goes, and then our turn will come back around. It's just. We got to wait our turn, man.
It's interesting to go to shows. A lot of Gen Xers. Because a lot of Gen Xers are becoming empty nesters, or, you know, we were born and raised being planners of some sort to balance life and work together. That's kind of like almost a keynote part of our culture, I think, for a lot of us. And it's fascinating. Like at Clutch, I mean, there were a lot of girls at Clutch, which I thought was really cool as well, and Rival Sons, of course, also, without a doubt. It's always good to have the ladies around and not be because the music's being placated towards them, like they did with hair metal, which just turned off us guys eventually, you know? So I'm like, hey, man, Bishop, we've taken up some time with you, and we really appreciate you coming on the show and speaking, hanging out with us a little bit.
Yeah. Well, before we leave too, Steve, just real quick too, tell everyone where they can go ahead and, you know, check out the record, keep up with you guys and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Right now we're selling the album exclusively through the Ripple Music Bandcamp site. We're not going to post it up. We're giving them the first opportunity to sell out there. We are carrying some inventory that we'll be selling live only. But if you want the album, please go to the Ripple Music Bandcamp site and purchase it there. Support the label, support independent music.
Fantastic. Once again, after the Falls of Record, Thunder Horse is the band. Mr. Stephen Bishop, man, we appreciate you coming on, bud. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it, man. Y'all have a great night.
All right.
Thanks for nothing. You wasted my time.